Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Monday nights on RCI TV. We are back for round two of the Challenge Cup here on RCI TV. I've had a week away over in Italy, and well, it is now time to resume the commentary here at the RCI TV YouTube channel. And well, getting back into things right off the bat with the Challenge Cup on Mondays. We're here at Oulton Park for the second round of the season after an absolute cracker at the first round at Spa. It was Jesse Lee and John Dalton that walked you through that race, and for this evening it will be myself and my favourite American alongside me for the race. It is the one, the only, the Jesse Lee.
Yes, hello, Ryan Gill. We're going to see a lot of each other this week, as it turns out, and it all starts today. You know what? I'm excited to be back here. I said at the end of the broadcast a week ago, regardless of not being on the cast for round two, I was going to be watching. I was in the crowd, but I've been plucked to be in the box tonight as well. And what a racetrack. Oulton Park, 3 different classes. It is going to be chaotic.
It is going to be chaotic, and we kind of saw that last week as well. 3 different classes, but unfortunately one of them quite underrepresented. Joe McCauley was the only Ferrari that we saw out at Spa, and unfortunately here tonight, he won't be present. The good news is we do have a Ferrari on the grid, and it's Wolf Matuszka. He's back from his hiatus for the first week of the championship, so he will fill out the one Ferrari we have out on the grid. We do have plenty more in the lower splits below, but it is going to be the Lamborghinis and the Porsches that we feature out here the most in the Challenge Cup for the Pro class this season. And Jesse Lee, I got the chance the past weekend to see this car, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo 2, up close, in person, on the track, in the paddock. And I have to say, it gives off that spaceship appeal that it has in ACC out in the real world as well, and they are fantastically recreated here.
No, you're absolutely right. We were talking about that. You were showing us photos, and we were having that very conversation over the weekend about just how futuristic those Lamborghini ST Super Trofeo cars look. All the different dive planes, canards, and all the different aero elements on that car that make it look so fantastic. It is the Batmobile of race cars.
Definitely is, and it handles a lot better than the old Super Trofeo did. It was a car that not many people liked, and it was quite hard to get people, encouraged to drive it. But I think the new Super Trofeo is a bit different. A lot of people seem to be really enjoying it. Of course, the new Porsche Cup car sounds absolutely incredible, and I think it will be the featured car out of the new selection of Cup cars that we have, alongside the M2 from BMW, actually, which has been a very, very impressive car, I feel, with a lot of people. There's definitely been a bit of a surprise package. We're going to go on board with Nico Kumpu here for the very first lap around Oulton Park at racing speed here for qualifying the 256. We're looking to make a good impression here, and we're expecting the Porsche Cup to be a little bit stronger around this circuit like it was at Spa, but there are plenty of other circuits on the calendar where the ST will get its time to shine. It's a bit more improved straight line speed and corner handling that it has this time around.
Yeah, of course, Oulton Park, a very tight and twisty circuit, but underrepresented for speed. You actually feel like you're going a million miles an hour around here. You're probably not, but it still requires very quick reactions, very quick steering as well, especially with the chicanes on the circuit, the hairpin, of course. And I think maybe the aero on the ST is going to help it a little bit, but I reckon the Porsche will certainly have the advantage here today.
It's interesting to discuss these cars, isn't it? Because they have strengths and weaknesses in completely different areas. The Porsche Cup car, the new one, very different to its old counterpart. It's a lot stronger in the corners this time, but it has a lot less straight line speed than the old one did. The Lamborghini Super Trofeo much better in the corners now, and its straight line speed is still very, very solid. And of course the Ferrari Challenge Evo, incredible on the straights, but then of course does suffer a lot in the corners. So all 3 of these cars find lap time in very, very different ways. We're going to see Nico Kumpu come up towards the line for the very first time. This lap is still valid, so we'll see what they have on the first time round. It's a 136.435 for Nico Kumpu on his first go around, and it's important to note that is just about a couple of seconds slower than what we saw some of the quickest times in practice. So plenty of pace left in not just the Lamborghini, but also in the Porsches as well, as we start to see some good times come down. Benjamin Heilmann for 1:35.395 takes the provisional pole for the time being, but even that time at the moment is still almost a second off what we saw at the top of practice.
I've never seen a man as in love with his race car than Benjamin Heilmann. You'll know him as Stewie. He's the man that runs our Friday and Saturday broadcast more often than not, and anytime he can get back in his beloved Porsche, whether that be the GT3 variant or the GT3 Cup car, or even the Cayman GT4 car, he will certainly snap at that opportunity. And of course, the proposition of a new car, the 992, too good for him to pass up. And it was great watching him a week ago. Just absolutely dominated, Ryan did, Benjamin Heilmann at Spa. It was very impressive, the command that he had over that car, and that most of the Porsche Cup cars had. It's so different than the 991. It's almost scary how different that car is. You can lean on the 992. Its drivability is way up now, and well, it still has that edge like most, if not all, Porsches do. You cannot go over that edge.
Yeah, of course, the one big thing that does limit the Porsche in some respects is that lack of traction control that the Cup car does still have. It is one of the elements that you would say the Lamborghini Super Trofeo is probably a bit more kinder to. It does still have that traction control element that you can depend upon, whereas in the Porsche Cup car you've got to learn to live without it, and that will limit the car's pace to some extent. People will find some good lap time in it, but as well it does make the car so difficult to control if you go over that fine line that you talked about earlier. And we can actually see Inestrosa has gone slightly quicker than what Benjamin Heilmann has managed now. Just 60 thousandths of a second separates the two provisional pole sitters at the moment. But Benjamin Heilmann, he's up by almost half a second, in fact just over half a second right now on his lap, and then we'll have to see if he can keep that up towards the end of the lap.
Certainly can lose it here. One corner, one bad corner will make a difference several tenths. It's a tight, twisty racetrack. You cannot afford to lose your rhythm. And, well, if anybody could do it, it would be Benjamin Heilmann. Inestrosa, interestingly enough, 296 was the car that I was watching before we went live. Car very rapid here today. And I'm just wondering where Inestrosa's pace was a week ago. They qualified 14th. I think they finished 11th as well. So not quite inside the top 10. And I wouldn't have expected that. This is more on pace. But what will Heilmann have coming to the line? This should be good enough for pole, and is 34.585.
So Benjamin Heilmann retakes that provisional pole that was taken away from him just slightly, but the two behind him, identical lap times there from the two Porsches behind, the 296 and the 40, so very close between those. The first of the Super Trofeo cars is Adam Dubiel, who's just come across the line. They're about 8.5 tenths of a second off of what Benjamin Heilmann has been able to do. I'd like to think that there is still time left in these Super Trofeo cars out here today, but definitely seems like the Porsche Cup car, as we suspected, Jesse, has the slight edge over the Super Trofeo. Although, if you do look down the field, Jesse, it's only really the top, 4 positions, top 5 positions where the Porsche Cup car is dominating over the Super Trofeo. When you go down below those positions, it does seem to be a big mix-up, and more often than not, there seems to be more Super Trofeos in the mid-pack than there are Cup cars.
We saw that also a little bit a week ago, where we had a gigantic clump of ST cars in the middle of the pack. It was fantastic to watch them race each other. Of course, we always have the few that are cut above the rest. They matriculated towards the top 10 and even the top 5 at various points in the race. But yeah, the vast majority were dead set in the middle of the field, and they were swamped on either side with Porsche Cup cars. And today, looking kind of similar to that as well.
Definitely so. We continue to watch the cars go around. This is Jack Alexander coming across the line and goes up into 4th place, 0.6 of a second off of provisional pole. And then we get another Super Trofeo go right back. Ostrich finds some additional pace in that Super Trofeo car that I thought we had. Just brings them within, or just outside actually, half a second off of the overall provisional pole time, but puts a Super Trofeo well into the mix. And it might be one of those elements that is a bit difficult for the Porsche Cup cars to deal with. We saw with Benjamin Harman got stuck behind one of the Super Trofeos at the Spa race. And the circuit around here, Jesse Lee, where overtaking is difficult, the Super Trofeo has a bit more straight line speed. If someone can pull off, you know, a good pit stop strategy or get a very good start and get ahead of a couple of these Cup cars, might be quite difficult for the Porsche Cup to fight back in the later stage of the race when they don't have the straight line speed and they just have to stick it around the outside or sit behind in the corners.
Well, see, that's the other thing. That's a very good point that you brought up, Ryan, because unlike Spa, where there was a lot of raceability in the racetrack as Philippe nearly goes off the track there, exiting Lodge Corner, and that would have been a faster lap, but invalidated, so that lap will not count. But yeah, this track completely different than Spa. There's not a lot of raceability here. The biggest way, the easiest way you're going to get around somebody here is that they are going to make a mistake. If a Porsche Cup car is stuck behind an ST, it's going to be very difficult for them to get through without a mistake from that ST.
So less than 5 minutes of qualifying remaining here at Oulton Park. It is quite a chilly day actually, 16 degrees ambient temperature and 19 degrees out there on the track. Very cloudy as well, no rain in sight at the moment. So we'll have to see.
Oh, that rejoin!
Oh, and clouds nearing. Just getting on with it there. They're sitting in 18th place at the moment. They're in the new Porsche Cup car at the moment. 1.5 seconds right now off of the provisional pole. It does seem at the moment, Jesse Lee, that Benjamin Harman's lap, the 134.5 that we have at the moment, absolutely blistering. No one able to quite get close to it right now. Jack Alexander is up by, I think, 0.2 of a second. He would probably be the one who would get closest to it as it stands right now, but as it looks at the moment, Benjamin Harman looking very, very comfortable here for this race at Oulton Park. And, well, the pink performance, I guess, in some form, going quite well out here today.
Well, it certainly is. And going back to Klaus Nyring for a second, I was very surprised. Down in 18th place, that's nowhere near where you normally expect to find Klaus. And even in P9, that's a little shocking still. But luckily, they've got a few more laps to make it up. Jack Alexander has hit the abort button on that lap. They'll return to pit lane. Currently qualified P5. Here's Caracas. Will this be a pickup for the 119? It was not a valid lap. It would have been a pickup had it been valid. It was not, so it isn't. And we move on, and that certainly didn't help there with Wolf Matuszka having issues in the first corner. Andy Boardman, P10, the Squadra Corsa 69. Looks very nice in that sort of dark red, almost maroon color. I like it. There is very few colors. We had this conversation the other day. There are very few colors in paint schemes that this ST does not look good in.
Yeah, there was quite a few incredible and striking liveries at Imola over the weekend, and I tend to agree. It does seem like a car that is pretty easy to make look good in some striking colours. It's interesting to see the mix that we've got out here today. Some people running the official eSport, I think, liveries that have come included with this car. Some people running some in-game customs that they have made as well, and I think we even have one or two cars running a full custom as well. I think Jordan Daly's Lamborghini is running a custom livery in the gold colour that it has at the moment. So, you know, there are some very nice colours that we've got out here on the grid as well, and you know, it is always good to see the creativity out on display as working towards the end of the session. Just about 2 minutes remaining now. No one quite able to get close to Benjamin Harman's time. De Kaiser has gone fastest of those that are getting close to Heilmann. He's just over 0.3 of a second now, putting himself on the front row of the grid, but still just about 0.3 off. It's not enough as it stands.
No, it sure isn't. He's tried to get up there, got sort of close in the ballpark. All three of those drivers, the 8, the 40, and the 296, very close to each other, but unfortunately still more than a quarter of a second off of Benjamin Heilmann. This is how you show up to a championship, and Heilmann will be absolutely loving this if he can pull this off again for a second week. And Adam Dubiel goes P2. It's a little bit more like it from the Forza Italia.pl driver.
Yeah, very, very good from Adam Dubiel to put that Lamborghini on the front row of the grid, only provisionally, but it could mean so much when it comes to the end of the qualifying session. Like I said, if we can get a Lamborghini up there, if it gets a good start, gets ahead, it could, well, really put the race on its head. One thing to look out for is Angel Inestrosa, though, doing really, really well on their lap time. Coming out of the final corner, looks like they're up by almost 0.4 of a second. This could be provisional pole. It is provisional pole by 20 thousandths of a second. Benjamin Heilmann is knocked off top spot right near the end. He is still out on track. He could still improve, but he's down by about 0.2 of a second now and has a lot of time to make up if he's going to take back that pole.
And Gratis Caracas got there before the end of the session. He's going to have this lap. It will count. And you want to talk about a driver that's in the early championship conversation. You can say that about Caracas. They're going to need a better lap here to get them further up in the top 10. We talked about it a little bit earlier, restating it just so we're all on the same page. There is not a lot of overtaking opportunities, and more than almost any other track in ACC, qualifying here absolutely matters.
Adam Dubiel comes up to the line for the final time. Won't improve, will be the highest of the Super Trofeos, and looks like they have third place firmly in the bag. So we'll have a Lamborghini on the second row of the grid. That could really throw up the mix as we go down towards turn 1 at the start. Benjamin Heilmann does not improve, which means that Inestrosa will take pole position for the second race of the season. Benjamin Heilmann, who dominated the majority of the qualifying session, knocked off of top spot by 20 thousandths of a second. Frustrating, I'm sure. But if that's the kind of pace comparison that we can see over the course of the race, this is going to be a fantastic effort out here tonight from all of the drivers. And I believe Caracas actually is up by about half a second, maybe a bit more than half a second, 0.6 of a second, coming out of the final corner up towards the line. Could this be big? How big will this be? It's up to third. They'll go on to the second row right at the very end from the 119.
Wolf Matuszka, 34th place, looking to improve and does not improve his position on that lap. You know, I feel bad for Peak Performance and Wolf Matuszka. They missed the one race they should probably have made in the Ferrari Challenge car, and now they make their debut at a track that probably is the polar opposite of Spa-Francorchamps, but there you have it. Ryan Gill, I know you weren't here last week, but let's take a look at the championship points and remind ourselves how we got here.
Yeah, we can have a look at the championship points. So as you said, Jesse Lee, it was Benjamin Heilmann who absolutely dominated last week and did a very, very good job and has a very nice 69 points to start the season as well. Followed by Nikolai Polyakov, just in second place with 58 points. Grantis Caracas on 56 points and Felipe Moreira with 48. Vince van Mervelde with 44 points rounds out the top 5. And then it's Klaus Neering, Jaroslav Roth, and Atamak Ertan who field out 6th, 7th, and 8th. Ole Pitchik is the first of the Lamborghinis that we have in the combined standings. They have 31 points, and Christopher Verstappen rounds out the top 10. Moving on to the second page, looking at Angel Inestrosa, who has obviously taken pole position here tonight, sitting on 25 points. Amadeo De Kaiser on 23. And then we get to some more of the Lamborghinis. Nico Kumpu and Adam Dubiel on 21 and 19 points. And Benjamin Schumann rounding out the top 15 with 17. Then we have in 16th place, we have Paul Jerzabowski with 15 points, 14 points for Stay Hughes, and then Jordan Daly, Presvek Ostrich, and Oliver Hagström Vigaskier with 11 points to round out the top 20. Then a bit further down, and the last of the point scorers, it's Andy Boardman with 10 points, Christian Lindgren with 9, Nicholas Nordqvist 8, Wilfred Brazil with 7, William Stevenson with 6, Bart Matcher 5, Jack Alexander 4, Wojciech Dvorak with 3, Joe McCauley, the lone Ferrari from Spa, has 2 points on the board, and Matthew Kingston Lee, the final point scorer from Spa. And then the non-point scorers, Tom Bryant, unfortunately, first of the losers, you could say, followed by Victor Nordquist, Mateusz Kajszek, and then
say that,
right? Jake Boswell also on 0 points, Peter Hedeberg, Jack Harvey, Martin Lawrence, Wolf Madushka, and Luke Stokes. I believe Luke Stokes and Wolf Madushka neither were present for the first race, and the same goes for Boris Durney as well. So, a few drivers with 0 points finishing outside the top 30, as that's how far down the points go. They'll be hoping for much better this week. Well, what a field that we have out here tonight. 34 cars, so we are missing a few drivers compared to the first round here at Spa, but 34 is a nice big number for a track like Oulton Park, and we have some fantastic cars out on the grid. Inestrosa on the front row alongside Benjamin Harman, the championship leader, Caracas and Dubiel in the Lamborghini on the second row of the grid, and further back you can see the cars as they are. Jesse Lee, I mean, predictions are usually something we're not pretty good at here at RCI, but we do like to play the game, and of course it's about that time that we ask that all-important question.
No, it absolutely sure is. And, well, I'm going to ride the horse that got me here. I picked Inestrosa before we went live tonight. I thought that their pace was a little off at Spa. It's returned here in a big way, and it needed to. They need a big race here to get them back into the championship conversation. I'm taking Angel Inestrosa.
Well, Angel Inestrosa is Jesse Lee's pick for the evening. Of course, Benjamin Harman would probably be the more popular pick. It'd probably be the bookie's choice if we had any betting around here. I'm going to stick to my roots. I wouldn't be able to come out here and do a cast without, being able to admit my bias. I am a Lamborghini fan through and through, and I'll put my eggs in the basket of Adam Dubiel for tonight. But of course, plenty of names up and down the field to look out for this evening. Of course, Andy Boardman in the 69 is a name that very, very familiar with for the Monday Championship, has been around here for a while. Same with Klaus Neiring as well, actually, in the 21. Of course, Martin Lawrence down in 17th place in the Porsche Cup car. Not used to seeing Martin Lawrence so far down the field, but really having a bit of a struggle. Then there's also Jordan Daly, who's becoming more familiar with the pro class. And one of the drivers that kind of came a bit out of nowhere, but immediately started competing in the pro class was the Swede, Olivia, I keep saying Olivia, it's Oliver, Hagström Vigaskier, who is, kind of came out of nowhere with the Asia Masters, immediately started competing with the Nissan, has opted for the Lamborghini this time around, and is doing, not too bad as well, down in 25th place for this evening, but I'm sure they'll have a much better race than they do qualifying. So plenty of people to keep an eye out for, and if you're keeping an eye out for the RCI staff that we have here this evening, you'll be looking out for the likes of Jake Boswell and Bart Matcher, who are down in 28th and 29th, but still in the pro split. Jordan Daly, who fields out for our esports team, or one of our esports teams, is up in 21st. So if you want to get behind a home favourite, of course, you can have a look at either of them. And if you do really want to support an underdog, 34th place, Wolf Matuszka, the only Ferrari driver on the grid this evening. He's going to need all the support he can get, Jesse.
He sure is, but think about this. For a headline, they should be both here for race number 3 next week, and they'll be tied in championship points.
Well, I mean...
I'm a silver linings kind of guy, Ryan. You know
I mean, look, I won't say you're not. I mean, you're not wrong. So you can always look at the bright side of life. But yeah, it will be a season of struggle, I feel, for Joe McCauley and for Wolf Matuszka. But hats off to them. A lot of drivers up and down the field, wouldn't have taken that car because they know how difficult it would have been to drive, and they will come out of this with probably a different perspective to a lot of drivers this season and how challenging it has been to drive that car. I mean, for a perspective of how challenging it is to drive, Samir Fogg, who we're used to seeing in the top split around here in RCI, he's also driving the Ferrari Challenge, but he couldn't qualify into the top split. He's in split 2, the silver split at the moment. So just to give you a little bit of an insight as to how difficult it is to get the pace out of that car, is that we do have drivers that usually feature in the pro split that just can't find the pace to match the other cars around here. It is kind of a shame, but I'm sure some of them will relish the challenge, and maybe they'll come out of it as better drivers.
Keep in mind about Samir as well, what Ryan's talking about is true, and not just a driver that usually is in the pro split. We're talking about a driver that is usually finishing in the top 5 in the pro split, having issues getting that car qualified in the top split. So that's the challenge. Speaking of the Ferrari Challenge, I would love a single make series with that car. I don't think this season of Challenge Cup is going to be a great representation of that Ferrari. I would love its own season by itself, single make, and have them go to some tracks that that car would race on. And I'd like to see what that's like with a gigantic group of those cars, but that is neither here nor there. Folks, if you're looking for something else to pay attention to today, you can look no further than 3rd or 4th on the grid, and Adam Dubiel. Adam Dubiel qualified on pole in the ST class last week, but had a litany of issues and somehow still scraped together 3rd place. But it was a frustrating effort for Adam, and he'll be looking to right the wrong today. He's already done part of the job by qualifying on the pole position in his class. And in the top 5, no doubt. Ryan Gill, it's going to be a fun race. It could be a fender-to-fender race. Let's get going.
Let's get going indeed. 60 minutes of racing here to serve at Oulton Park for round 2 of the Challenge Cup. It's an all-Porsche front row. We have a Lamborghini on the second row of the grid, and we have plenty of drivers hungry to score points here today. The race is live. 60 minutes is go. And down into turn 1 on the outside line is Benjamin Harmon trying to go around the outside of Inestrosa. We've had a bit of contact a bit further back. I think Adam Dubiel got caught up at the start. But between the leaders, there was some slight contact. Benjamin Harmon tried to go around the outside, couldn't quite get it done. Then there was almost contact with Caracas, who was putting him under pressure. Inestrosa has got away. There's a couple of cars off in the background. The stewards will have some work to do at the beginning, I'm sure, but it looks like the majority of the field have got through safely at the beginning.
Well, they definitely were. From about 10th place on back, they were certainly 3 wide through Old Hall, and that didn't work out. And by the time they got to the Avenue, there was already a spin. But by the time they got to Cascades and Lakeside, I reckon they just about had it sorted out. I was worried about Shell Corner down there, the hairpin, if you will. There doesn't seem to be any major conflict through there. Clean through the first chicane for the very first time, and now the chase is well and truly on. Inestrosa leads Heilman and Caracas, who we ride on board now. You've survived the first couple of turns, and now it's all down to your focus and how much grip you have that car set up for the next 58 and a half minutes.
Yeah, definitely, depending on how your car is set up. And, well, for a moment, as we reach towards the end of the lap, there obviously was a couple of cars caught up in incidents at the beginning. There's a bit of a gap already formed in the pack as it stands right now. But let me just give you a bit of a perspective. If you were supporting an underdog tonight, if you wanted to support Wolf Madushka because he's in the Ferrari, he's in the car that's got its back against the wall, he's a major winner out here tonight on the very first lap. He's gone from 34th on the grid to 16th at the end of lap 1. He's benefited massively. And there's a collision behind him as well, and that's caused some issues for some other drivers. 2 Super Trofeo cars, I think that was, coming together just behind Wolf Madushka. But to make my point clear, he got the fastest lap of the race from being right at the back of the grid. He's now up into 14th after lap 1, Jesse.
Yeah, it's absolutely stonking what's happened to them, and Klaus Nyring, I'm afraid, has been involved in this accident. Let's take a look and see just what happened. They're 2x2 going through Old Hall. That's not always a recipe for disaster, but what happens here that sets this off now? Oh, there was a car up in front on the avenue, had already been crashed, was stranded in the middle of the racetrack, collecting 2, 3, 4 cars, including Klaus Nyring's Porsche. And that was a big moment there that took out some really fast race cars.
It is always unfortunate when you're in a train. Sometimes you can't exactly see where the incident ahead is. Of course, there's yellow flags, but you don't always have a reference for exactly where the incident is, what side of the track it is, unless you have the track map on and you can really spot it ahead of you. Meanwhile, just looking a bit further down here, this is Martin Lawrence going side by side. I think that's with Dvorak at this time, just trying to get through it. Looks like Dvorak's got some damage. Martin Lawrence has already gone in to serve his mandatory pit stop for the race, and there's contact between the two of them coming through. I think Dvorak was just trying to keep it on the inside of Martin Lawrence and just went into the side. Martin Lawrence has had to tow back to the garage. I'm not sure what's happened to Dvorak. I think he's stuck on the side of the corner trying to get going again. But some of these cars at the moment, Jesse, they have to take different lines through the corners, and working side by side just won't work.
Yeah, that's sort of an extension of the conversation we were having in qualifying, Ryan, was that if you're behind one car, it's going to be very difficult to overtake them simply because everything on your car is different. ST versus Porsche Cup car, and we're not even going to talk about the Ferrari realistically. That car is its own enigma. And that I think was case in point that you made in qualifying, that getting around another car is going to be very difficult indeed. And I would not want to be either one of those drivers in that case. Martin Lawrence very clearly frustrated with that accident, as that has completely taken them out of the race. And De Keyser here trying to get by Nordquist. But again, this is the thing we were just talking about. It's a risky maneuver. It looks like the Porsche might have the legs on Nordquist a little bit, but that's one thing. Catching him's one thing. Passing's quite another.
Yeah, and passing around a tight track like this is going to be quite difficult, and that's why qualifying was very, very important for a lot of these drivers. But of course, there are those opportunities. If you can make them stick, it is definitely possible. We're going to have a look on here with Durney going down in towards the final corner, not able to do anything yet, just going to think better of it and back out and think for next time. And might be the better call at this early stage in the race, just not really go in for any rash moves at this point in time. Just keep a cool head and see how much you can gain going up the field. And if you get held up, maybe decide to pit early, get some clean air and set down some lap times. But if not, if you can't guarantee you can find that clean air, might just be better to sit in tow and follow some people at the moment. I can also tell you that Patushka is up into 13th place. That's courtesy of De Keyser coming in and serving his mandatory pit stop. And I think at this point in time, Jesse, even when Wolf pits and he decides, he will lose quite a few positions once he does do that pit stop, he's still going to be a massive gainer on lap 1. He avoided a lot of the commotion that was in the mid-pack, and it doesn't look like his car's got any damage on it at this point in time. And when it comes to the straights, well, there's only one car that's going to beat out on the straights, and that is the Ferrari.
I love it. I just love it so much. Wolf Patushka has come out of absolute obscurity. He's up nearly 20 positions in just about 5 or 6 minutes. That's absolutely insane. And if you factor in what car he's driving, that makes that even more insane. Wolf Patushka making a driver of the day argument for sure.
Definitely so, and it's Lamborghini versus Lamborghini here for 5th place overall, and this is the lead of the Super Trofeo classification, and both running identical liveries, and in fact the 3rd place car in the Super Trofeo class is also running the same livery, so it's all team 1, 2, 3 for Forza Italia.pl e-racing at the moment, doing very, very well at this stage. DBL obviously not able to keep with the likes of the Cup cars at this stage in the race, and we kind of assumed that that would be the case, Jesse Lee, from qualifying, but at the same time, it isn't, not going so bad for them. Managed to keep the lead in the Super Trofeo class, which would have been what was most important to Adam DBL, and has kept it out of trouble, but right now, under a bit of pressure from his teammate.
All right, let's talk about it. It comes up a lot. It comes up in Formula One every single week. We'll talk about it as Dirty here losing a spot. A little bit of contact there against another ST. They get it sorted out, but only just after they fought for that position. That's Hagstrom Vigashu trying to get by Dirty in the 999 and nearly had an incident doing it, showing intent down into his look, but no, can't get that done. Falls back in line, gets a really great run out of that and into Knickerbrook, but it will not matter because the turns are so very tight. But let's talk about it, Ryan Gill. We've got the Forza Italia cars running all exclusively in the podium positions. Team orders here, are they free to race each other as hard as they would anybody else? What do you expect out of those drivers?
It's difficult to say. Every team kind of treats it differently in that respect. It might be that, you know, for their sake, they're competing for podium positions. Maybe they're not too bothered about the likes of team orders. They just want to compete to have the best result for them individually. As long as they don't take each other out, they're probably happy to fight each other. And if they're in voice communication with each other, that kind of relieves the tension a bit sometimes between yourselves, because you know, you have that trust in your teammate to not send it down the inside from about a second back from you. So potentially things could be a bit more lax at the moment in the Forza Italia camp, but they're looking pretty good at the moment. And well, speaking of looking pretty good, Polyakov looking good at the moment as he's up into second place overall, second in the Cup class. Benjamin Harleman at the moment didn't quite capitalize on a move around the outside that he tried on Inostroza at the start. Almost got caught out by Caracas, didn't quite get caught out, managed to keep second, but has now been demoted to third.
This is very interesting. The two tracks that we started the season out could not be more different, but the start for Benjamin Heilman pretty much similar. Didn't have a start to write home about its spot either. Ended up still winning that race. Able to execute pit strategy last week to get that done. And he was running, I think, fifth at one point was Heilman there. And back to third at this point. It's going to be curious to see what Heilman does again.
And now this is an interesting situation to be in, and Wolf Matuszka will be very, very wary of this situation because he's in a Ferrari car that is very, very good in a straight line, but has to brake quite early for some of these corners, whereas the car behind him, the 64 Porsche, can brake quite a bit later, but obviously doesn't have that straight line speed. Much quicker in the corners, but then loses out once we get to the straights. It's going to be a tug of war, I think, here between the 25 and the 64. And this is kind of what I said about with the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. The Porsche Cup cars might find it difficult to get past them. The Super Trofeo has that edge on the straights. It's not as bad in the corners as the Ferrari is by any means, so of course it can handle a battle with the Cup car a bit better, but this is going to really be a challenge. And here we go, we've got all three cars in one shot at the moment. The Challenge in front, the Cup in the middle, and the ST behind. And the big question is now, who's going to blink first with a mistake? And the big problem for Beal at the moment in the 64 is he's right in the middle of it. He's got to be very careful of the Super Trofeo behind, and he's got to be also careful of the Challenge in front, that he doesn't run into the back of it in the braking zones.
I'll just put it to you this way. I'm not Mateusz Sisek, but if I was, I would play this very, very chill right about now because there is a powder keg in front of him, and there's no notebook on how to get this done. The Ferrari Challenge, like I said earlier, an animal of its own breed, and we know what the 992 is pretty much capable of, and we reckon that it should have the legs into and off of the corner better than the Ferrari Challenge car, but to this point still that issue at Oulton Park not being able to pass. And Sisek here, I'd be very careful. And look at this, I believe the 60, yes indeed, 64 has peeled off into pit lane. That's released Sisek now. Sisek will have to go and get around Wolf Matuszka. I don't hate that strategy by Wilford right there. Didn't want to have to deal with it. Get your pit stop done. Get back out there in clean air, hopefully you don't have to worry about that Ferrari later.
Yeah, that's going to be the call, isn't it, to see if you can jump them by going for the undercut. The only issue with that is you have to try to guarantee that you can actually get some clean air and you can get some good lap times in. The thing is with Wolf Matuszka at the moment is it's going to be impossible to overtake that car on the straights. You could have a go down into the braking zone with how much earlier the Ferrari does have to brake, but you have to be careful of not running into the back of the car, of course, and that's going to be the problem for Kajek here at the moment in 427. We're going to see exactly how it will close up when it comes to the braking zone. The Lambo brakes, get very, very close, but then closing up in the corners even more, but has to be careful not to run into the back of the 25, and then we get out to the corner, you put the power down, and the Ferrari just says, okay, let's go.
Now, a lot of people will say that the Ferrari challenge car doesn't have any aerodynamics. That's not true. It's just that the Ferrari has so much power that it feels like that. And in comparison to the Lamborghini, where I would consider it very balanced indeed, it just feels completely different. So Isaac should have the advantage still into and off of corners, but down the straight, nobody is going to catch Wolf Matuszka. It just ain't going to happen.
Each of these cars represents, something completely different. You have the Ferrari representing that pure straight line speed and power that loads of people love. You have the Porsche Cup car that emphasizes that control and stability. And then you've got the Lamborghini, which tries to be, jack of all trades. It's in between both. It has some straight line speed, it has some great cornering, but it's not a master like either of the other two cars are. So you have you have one extreme to the other, and then you have the one in the middle. And the problem here for Kajek at the moment, as you can see, is every time it gets to coming out of the corners, that Lamborghini is basically just playing a game of how little time it will lose on the straights this time around. And then when it comes to the Porsche Cup car behind, you can see Dolezal right now just gaining in, but the problem is, the Porsche Cup car has the exact same problem, but just to a lesser degree. Every time it catches up to the Super Trofeo, it's losing out on the straight, so it can't capitalize. It has to take an advantage, and Wolf Matuszka's made a mistake. He's come out of the corner. He just clipped the gravel, and I think Kajek just tapped the back of him as well. Wolf Matuszka's lost a couple of places, and that's Vigaskew getting all out of shape as well. We'll see a replay here. I think Wolf just got a bit out of shape coming out of the corner, just went over the curb, just clipped the grass, clipped the gravel, just a tap there from Kajek. I'm not sure if the Lamborghini had enough time to react to that either. Might be interesting. Oh, and then there's Vigaskew as well, just coming across the Ferrari much quicker than he expected. That will be one for the stewards to look into at the moment, and from what I hear, Jesse, they are quite busy at the moment. 15 minutes in, they're still reviewing some of the incidents that happened on lap 1, so it might be a while until we get the full dose of penalties coming in.
Yes, indeed. I believe Connor is the head steward on Monday, and he was none too pleased, knowing the other stewards, about some of the antics in the opening laps. They're hard at work, as always. And it was never going to be a completely squeaky clean race at Oulton Park, was it? I don't think in their very long and illustrious career there's ever been what you would call a perfect clean race here. It just isn't that kind of racetrack. This track breeds contact and very close racing. We're getting both today, and it has been an absolute treat on some instances. Jordan Daly also reporting as well that they had an accident early into this race. I didn't specifically see the people racing for Race Couture. It could be Triple R, but either way, don't believe I saw that car involved in the earlier melee, but at some point they've been involved in an incident as well. And now Vigaskew has dropped off the back of Wolf Matuszka a little bit. Don't know if that's a pace thing or just sizing up the Ferrari a little bit that we're seeing there. Battles happening everywhere. The keys are in the 8 car, the NSN Racing Porsche 992, trying to get by Harvey. Of course, De Kieser's made their pit stop. Harvey hasn't done. And maybe a little bit of pressure here to get by the 159. And it won't be too hard if they keep doing that.
So Harvey just leaves the back end slightly there. That happens a lot easier with no traction control to save the car. You have to lift off the gas and really, really get that car planted again. Harvey managing to do so, but losing a significant amount of time in the process. Like you said, won't be too much harder for them to catch up and get their way past if Harvey starts doing that on a regular basis, but we'll have to continue and see how that one plays out. Vigaskew is also in the pit lane, so they've got fed up with following Wolf Matuszka for the moment. That might be Wolf Matuszka's plan at this point, just get to a stage where someone's following you. Kaiser goes deep into the hairpin. that's lost them some time, and it's given the likes of Harvey just a bit more breathing room to play with.
Well, that wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to DeKeyser, but if he would have crested the top of that, it's like an oval banking in that corner. If you go over it, you fall off the other side, yourself in a whole world of trouble. So best case scenario there, got it stopped on the pavement and was able to continue on. The only damage done was in the delta for that driver. Jack Alexander leads Vigaskew here, still trying to get that pass done. Oh yes, okay, so that's Will Stevenson. Will Stevenson has just passed the 108. It's just an open front there.
So Will Stevenson up into 25th place by the looks of it. Also, I did just see on the other monitor, I think Harvey actually did lose it, and DeKeyser has got past them now. So a mistake, I believe, from the 159 and the change of position there. Meanwhile, we're looking at Felipe Moreira at the moment in the Porsche Cup car and chasing down Dirty in the 999. Of course, Moreira has been into the pit lane to serve their mandatory pit stop. Dirty has not. So whilst this is a battle for a position,
look at that.
There will definitely be the 314 will be ahead of the 999 by the time that the pit stop for that car comes out, and they're closing in on Wolf Matushka, would you believe it, at the moment. So they're about to get a very rude cork in the bottle, I guess is the only way to call it, with the Ferrari. Oh, and a bit of contact there as Moreira probably just misjudging the brakes and how much later they can brake than the Lamborghini, just going into the back of Durney at that point, a flash in the lights. Maybe that's just to apologise, or maybe it's a bit of frustration. Not entirely sure, but the first penalty of the race has come out, and it's for Hagstrom Vigaskew in the 81, a stop and go 10, Jesse Lee, and judging by some of the messages we've had from the stewarding team, that will not be the last of the penalties we see tonight for some lap 1 incidents. We expect a few more to be on the way before the end of the evening.
That is a pretty significant penalty. A stop-go 10 is only really applied for a multi-car takeout, and in fact is the case here. Stop and go 10 for car 81 for diving down the inside, causing at least 3 cars to crash, including the 166 and the 214. Stop-go 10, one of the biggest penalties in the stewards' arsenal, Ryan.
It is one of the biggest penalties in the arsenal, and it's one of the big penalties you really don't want to incur. A race ender is what a lot of people usually refer to it. It's basically taking an additional pit stop. At some circuits it'll hurt you more at others, like say for example in Spa-Francorchamps it'll hurt you a lot more than it will here at Oulton Park. But either way, it's time that you're losing that you do not want to lose, and especially around here where every second matters and being ahead of other cars definitely does matter. It's not a penalty that you particularly want to serve. Hagstrom Vigaskew has come in, by the way, and is serving that penalty at this point. They are rolling again, so that penalty is served and out of the way. And I think it's always a sign that when a driver comes in immediately to serve a penalty, Jesse, it almost looks like a pure admission of guilt at that point, that, yep, I messed up, I know it, I'll get this out of the way, and we'll carry on with the race.
Oh, contact there! Oh, more contact! All of them get together. Dirty got into Matushka, Moreira got into Dirty, and they all go for a little extracurricular trip, and that is a disapproving flash of the lights. There's the first contact, and then he gets rear-ended. That was pretty sloppy, scruffy racing there, but to be completely honest, that could have been a lot worse.
Wolf Matushka's back end today being tapped probably a few more times than he would like, but fortunately for him, he doesn't actually seem to have lost the car here. Has definitely kept that rear end planted when he's needed to, and is definitely making the most of going forwards. Hopefully the damage that he's probably incurred on the back end of that car won't damage it too much, won't slow his pace too much. Not that his pace has been particularly great so far this race anyways, lapping in the 37s for his best lap of the race right now. Most other drivers in the 36s or 35, so definitely struggling right now, but he had that amazing lap 1, and we'll have to see exactly where he is after the pit stops. But Matuszka's plan right now is to go as long as possible, and looking a bit further up the field, back up towards the podium places. This is not the situation that our championship leader would want to find himself in, Jesse Lee. He started second, he tried to get the lead at the start, now fell down to third, and in a few moments, or maybe a few laps, depends on how long this battle goes on for, Caracas could demote him out of the podium places.
I'm very curious what Heilmann's plan is for the pit stop. For whatever reason, after the stop in Spa, that car came to life and they started doing some damage, but before that, they did lose several spots and not really gain on the leaders too much. I'm curious if today is going to be the tale of two halves for the 796 car like it was a week ago. It's looking a bit dismal right now, if I'm completely honest. Gratis Caracas now trying to take away that spot, like you said, and the way that Heilmann usually defends, it isn't too fierce. It isn't a staunch defense from the German driver, so I don't think you're going to see any nasty weaving from him here today, which might play into Caracas' advantage here if he gets close enough.
Definitely could play into his advantage, and I'm sure it's a situation that
here we go again.
Championship leader doesn't want to be in, and yet here it is. Here we do go again. It's Pereira on the back of Wolf Matuszka.
But I just might want to pit again. It seems to be working for everybody else.
It's going back to those old F1 days. You stuck behind someone, just pit to get out of traffic. You know, back in the days of having about 5 or 6 pit stops a race wasn't entirely a bad decision. But out here at the moment, this is not where Felipe Moreira wants to be at the moment. He doesn't want to be stuck behind Wolf Matuszka, but he doesn't really have much of a choice at the moment. And Wolf Matuszka makes a slight mistake, and that's going to allow Moreira the opportunity that he needs and he wanted. Gets away and gets through on the 25. He'll go up the road. Wolf Matuszka won't care too much. But for Felipe Moreira, that is a gift. And he'll think he's the luckiest driver on the grid, because that's, I think, the first time we've seen someone get past Wolf Matuszka today without contact.
Yeah, Felipe's the only driver that's been able to pass the Pink Performance 25 Ferrari today. So take that with a badge of honor. And for Moreira, it's very important that he gets gone in P13. He's the leader of the cars that have pitted. He's going to look for another quality finish in week 2 to keep himself in championship competition. He's got a few positions he's got to make up, but I reckon he will make a lot of those up in the pit stop battle here for P19.
Battle for P19. This is Christian Lindgren and Stay Hughes at the moment. Both of them in the Porsche Cup car, and there's some damage on the front end of, I believe that's Dolezal's car. Just behind the 191, so a bit of damage there, but Dolezal in the JS Hot Lappers car closing in on Lindgren in the three-way battle for 19th place at the moment. And getting very, very close. There seems to be battles all over the place, doesn't there, Jesse Lee? Everywhere you look up and down the field, and even in the lead, it's starting to get closer. It was 2.6 seconds between the leaders just a few laps ago. Now it's 1.2 seconds. The gaps are coming down all over the place, Jesse Lee. And it almost just seems like at the moment, there's not really that many drivers that find themselves in a no man's land. The only drivers that do, at this point in time that I can see, is Kajszek, who has, I believe, 7 seconds in front and 3 behind. And then probably Verstappen, who has 11 seconds in front and 7 behind him. They seem to be the only people at the moment that are in a bit of a no man's land and have no one nearby.
This racetrack breeds that. It's one of the great things about Oulton Park. It's why I love racing here. The races always either go away from you or come to you. I can't tell you which one I prefer, but it should be very obvious indeed. As Jack Alexander goes a dive up the inside and has contact with the best name in sim racing, and the best name in sim racing spun around.
Oh dear, contact there. There's Matthew Kingston-Lee coming through the 555. He's in 24th place now, and I'm just looking on my timing screen just so I've seen a couple of penalties coming out. Oh my word, I've just seen an absolute send from Boris Turney on Wolf Matuszka. I think there was just enough space for a Super Trofeo car to get through there that Wolf Matuszka left, and, well, Boris Cerny, one way or another, managed to find that space against the Ferrari Challenge Evo. I've seen a drive-through penalty come out for the 427, a drive-through penalty come out for the 69, a 15-second penalty come out for Adam Dubiel, the lead Super Trofeo. At this point in time. So there are some penalties coming out here at the moment for some drivers and stewards finally working their way through some of the incidents and getting them applied now out on the track. And one of the common themes at the moment, Jesse Lee, it seems to be most of the Super Trofeo cars accumulating these penalties.
Well, I hate it for Adam Dubiel. It's the second week in a row. This is exactly what put him on the back foot last week, and it's happened again. And for his teammate, who has done nothing wrong and has just followed in line with the lead Super Trofeo, they're going to get rewarded here. They're going to take the lead and potentially have a shot to win this race. Just for clarification purposes, of course, here are the penalties that have come through. A 15-second penalty for car 840 for braking hard and early and steering into the side of the 40. He was then sent off the track. A drive-through for car 427 for taking out the 108 and the 256. A drive-through for car 69 for moving across the 1 and taking them out. A warning for car 427, additionally, for contact with the 108, resulting as a result of a rejoin. No further action between the 8 and the 840. Racing incident between the 444 and the 8. No further action between the 41 and the 21. No further action between the 159 and the 747. And I believe, have I reread? Oh, yes. Correction made by the stewards here. There's a drive-through for the 427, but it's for taking out the 340 position, not return. No, that's a second. That's not a correction. That is a second drive-through penalty for car 427, Ryan.
Oh, well, Kajek, we have seen them involved, I think, in a couple of incidents that we actually saw, so maybe coming not too much as a surprise. I think they had contact with Wolf Matuszka as well, so some incidents coming out, unfortunately, for the 427, 2 drive-through penalties. That's essentially a stop and go. Andy Boardman has cleared his penalty immediately. Kajek has come in to serve his first drive-through. Wolf Matuszka is now into the pit lane as well, by the way. He's decided that now is the time to pit, so I guess we'll find out exactly where they are. And unfortunately, the 427 has been disqualified by race control. They've accumulated too many license points in this race, and as such, they've been classified as disqualified, which is a real shame to see, Jesse, but unfortunately, it's just a case of by the book. Once you hit that number, you have to be disqualified as per the stewarding guidelines.
Well, I was going to ask the question, how do the stewards deal with that, having 2 drive-through penalties? Because you can't give 2. You have to serve 1 and then immediately give another one if they were going to do that. But due to the license point limit, that's not a concern that they have to have. Unfortunate for the 427. Isaac no longer taking part in this race. Now, they will be allowed to return for race number 3. That wasn't a disqualification from the season, just a disqualification from the race today, accumulating more than the maximum of penalty points in a single race. So,
but they have to be careful for the rest of the season because it's only 12.
Oh, yes.
It's 12 or 14, I believe, for the entire season. So if you've accumulated 6, which I think is the threshold for disqualification, then you've got almost half or exactly half of what you're allowed to accumulate over the course of the season. So, you know, a race disqualification, whilst it isn't season disqualification, it definitely puts you on a path of which you have to be a lot more careful going forwards for the rest of the season. You don't want to be on 6 license points or more 2 races into a 6-race calendar.
No, you couldn't be more right. It definitely makes you, it changes the way you play, isn't it? It's like in football, playing with a yellow card. You gotta mind your business. You gotta play a little bit cleaner. Put your church shoes on, as they say sometimes here. And I think that will be the path for them going forward. Radis Caracas still trying to get by Benjamin Heilman, but Polyakov in the 40 Porsche has pitted already, and they have the Speed Juice Fastest Lap of the Race award, and they are the leader on the road of the cars that have pitted. And I don't know which car was more out of sorts there, Heilman or Caracas. I'm just going to go with a tie.
absolutely love the onboard cameras where you can see the drivers fighting the wheel and you can feel the car move around inside. They're some of the best cameras that you can get for a perspective of the race, and especially watching the battle, you can see the back end of Benjamin Harmon's car just stepping out there again as well, and not much between these two. Of course, we have had Polyakov come in and serve their mandatory pit stop, so like you said, they've got the fastest lap of the race. They've now got some clear air as well, so they'll be trying to use that to their advantage. As we continue to watch this onboard at the moment, this might go down as like onboard of the race or perspective of the race, I don't know, but absolutely fantastic stuff out here today, and there has been some risky driving and some yikes driving, I think, that we've seen out here today, but we've also seen some absolutely fantastic driving from some drivers out here today, and it's definitely an absolute joy to watch. Just to end this, Wolf Dushka, by the way, has done his pit stop. He's come out in 22nd place, so at the moment he's up plus 12 on where he started.
Yeah, and he's probably still, before the end of this race, I'd reckon he might gain a few more spots as well. And you can never count out the penalties. You know, you're talking about the camera work, the in-car cameras. I think Ryan Mawson, specifically when he's working the cameras, he takes us the cameras that amuse him, and by virtue of that, amuse us as well. And that perfectly illustrated what these cars are like to drive, as Heilman on the back of a lapped car, trying to get around them, but also trying to not let Caracas by, but unfortunately that has happened, as Gratis Caracas has got by both of them in the 119. Let's take you back and show you how this happened. That is the lap car, and Heilman goes for a move down into Druids. It doesn't come off. Excuse me, that wasn't Druids, that was Lodge. And up through Deer Leap, and it's easy peasy for Caracas to get by. The lap car gives way, but the damage has been done. Gratis Caracas P2 now. What a move!
Yeah, definitely a good move, and taking advantage of, you know, a situation that comes their way. I mean, Benjamin Harmon will be frustrated, but sometimes that's just luck of the draw. Caracas did nothing wrong, just took advantage of it and stuck it well around the outside as well. Unfortunately, I have just been notified that Andy Boardman has been disqualified for speeding in the pit lane, which is not really exactly what you want to hear, but it's quite unfortunate for Andy Boardman. I do think that is going to be cleared by race control, and they'll get a stop go 30 for their trouble instead, but for the 69, not a very nice day indeed.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Ryan, by the way. That is what will happen. It's unfortunate he's been disqualified. He's going to lose a lap or two anyway, but the disqualification will and has already been reversed. That's an ACC penalty, by the way, folks. If you speed more than, I think it's 15 or 20 Ks over the limit into pit lane, you get automatically DQ'd. That was a new feature in the 1.81 update, I'm pretty sure, for ACC. And our stewards disagree with that, and they very quickly made that impromptu rule that disqualifications will be lifted for speeding in the pit lane, and you will be assigned the usual stop and go 30 for doing so for such an infraction. So basically we have, in our own stewarding, reverted that penalty back to where it was pre 1.8 patch.
I mean, the only difference is that you're not disqualified from the race. You still get a
you get to drive, yeah.
You get a massive penalty, but you are allowed to continue onwards in the race. And well, I mean, if Andy Boardman decides to continue, it's entirely up to him, of course. But he is at least given that option. And looking forward here, Caracas now trying to find their way through on the 999 by the looks of it here at the moment, just trying to find their way through on a back marker, and unfortunately Benjamin Harmon not quite close enough to capitalise on that and try and make their way through. Adam Dubiel still leads in the Super Trofeo class, but that 15-second time penalty means that Jarzabowski is going to inherit that lead when the pit stops come around, so the 36 at the moment, just biding their time really to inherit that place. And whilst we've seen the Porsche Cup cars dominate the podium positions at the moment, the majority of the top 10 right now, Jesse Lee, belongs to Lamborghini.
Yeah, it sure does. I think when everybody pits, that's going to change just a little bit. But for right now, let's dream, shall we? the majority of STs in the top 10. And talk about Paul Jarzabowski for a second and the race that he's had. He's played very nicely with his teammates, hasn't he? He's not put a foot wrong today, and he's going to get a nice little boost here up into P1, barring any crazy antics on pit road. I bet you Jarzabowski didn't even know it was his birthday.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a birthday gift for for Jarzabowski, and you know, you've got to take everything that comes your way in some of these championships. 22 minutes and 20 seconds to go of the race. We have just under 21 minutes of the pit window left remaining, and it is pretty much the top 10 par Polyakov that need to fill in and do their mandatory pit stop. So we'll see how all of them decide to fix that out, which ones will leave it as late as possible. And the interesting thing for me, Jesse Lee, at the moment is what will happen between Inestrosa and Polyakov. It was about a 1.2 second gap between the 40 and the 296 when pit stops happened out. Polyakov decided to pit to get some clear air so that they could try and put in some hot laps and undercut the likes of Inestrosa. Inestrosa didn't respond to that. They're going to keep going. And at the moment, between the 296 and the 40, it's just a battle of the hot laps to see which one will come out leading towards the end of the race. And at the moment, it looks like the 40 is winning that hot lap battle just a fraction.
Yeah, it sure does look like that. I love that in-car cam, and I love the cameras that really show how the Porsches are exiting the corners. They weren't doing that at the start of this race, folks. That's new. That all started to happen around the halfway point in the race. The old 991 Cup car had a very similar handling characteristic where when the fuel load burned off, it drove considerably worse than it did on a full tank. And you could fix that with setup, but it would basically just reverse the issue where it handled really okay, or sort of neutral, which is not really great in race car terms, but still better than bad on low fuel, but it would absolutely ruin it on full fuel. And that was sort of the 991. The 992 is a little bit more restrained, but I'm starting to see, especially here, I didn't really see this last week, but these cars all of a sudden on the low fuel, on the worn tires, giving some of these drivers fits. They're sawing at the wheel a little bit.
Well, the problem you have is it's kind of like the Porsche GT3 car, where that car behaves very differently on full fuel to low fuel. You know, especially with the GT3, where the fuel tank is in the front of the car, so obviously all of the weight is on the front of the car, and the car feels, you know, quite comfortable when it's on full fuel. But when you start to take that weight off the front, all of a sudden the car is so much lighter that the change is quite drastic. And you'll see typically with the Porsche drivers especially, they'll run completely different ride heights on the front when they have a full fuel tank and then an empty fuel tank, so between qualifying and race setups, for example. When it comes to a race setup, you kind of just have to plan your ride height around the car being on full fuel and then on low fuel, because you have to go through both phases. So, you know, the Cup car as well might be going through similar sort of phase where the car just feels drastically different on full fuel to low fuel because the balance is completely different. Other cars which have the fuel tank, say, in the middle or in the back, for example, don't entirely have that issue all the time. You know, the balance is a bit more even, especially if the fuel tank is in the middle of the car. So, you know, very different approaches to how the cars are made. It affects how they handle over the course of a stint massively, and you're starting to see that here, I feel, with the Porsche Cup cars.
Well, it's not deterring them from making moves as we continue to see several Porsche cars trying to make that move. Jack Alexander might get this spot from Steve Hughes, as Steve Hughes had a massive wiggle out of Lodge, and near contact in the old hall, but they just about save it. Case in point, just because the cars are not handling very well, they're not deterring from racing. Jack Alexander had his hands full, and so did Steve Hughes, for what it's worth. Well, we saw Felipe Moreira earlier have some excellent racing, but also a fender bender, and they received a 5-second penalty for their troubles. And that penalty reads as such: 5-second penalty for car 314 for tapping the 444 from behind causing them to lose a position. Additionally, there's no further action between the 69 and the 444. Racing incident between the 340 and the 21. Racing incident 119 and the 40. Racing incident with the 999. Racing incident 427.25 and the 191. Racing incident 999 and the 314. And they're on lap 12 now, so they're getting closer.
Definitely are getting closer, but some things still coming out. 5-second penalty for Moreira isn't, I mean, that's one of the more tame penalties that we've seen in here today, so
Ain't that the truth?
that's quite well behaved, I think, in the stewards' book so far today. And having a look here at Jarzembowski's perspective, just following his teammates still, coming through traffic at this point and just trying to make it up. And you kind of get the feeling of how he's following his teammate here at the moment, not making any moves because he knows that the lead of the race is already in his hands once the pit stops cycle through. Some drivers, Jesse, you don't see this level of, I guess, maturity or professionalism, whatever you want to call it. They'll keep pushing, they'll keep going, and they'll want to try and take that position on track before we get to the pit stops or the end of the race. But to me, you know, here from Jarzembowski, it's a lot more professional, it's a lot more mature. You know that first place is already in the bag. You're not being pressured from anyone behind directly. You don't have to worry about it right here, right now. Just focus on your race. And, you know, when the place comes to you, it will come to you, and figure out the rest when it happens.
That's the word I was going to use, Ryan. That's well put. That's maturity from Jarzembowski right there, knowing that Alapicic's way too far behind to say anything about this battle. He's not catching. He's 5 seconds off of the lead battle. You know Tabil's going to come into pit as well. He's going to be sitting still 15 seconds longer than you are. It's in the bag at this point, and Powell just driving to a number, not doing anything that would get him into trouble. He's worked lap traffic decently as well. Very tame, very mature drive from Powell Jarzembowski, under no threat here. But speaking of threat, Benjamin Heilman, remember when I said a week ago he turned the wick up at the end of the race? It's happening again. Heilman has re-caught up to the back of Caracas now.
Well, for these guys, they're coming across a pretty notorious pink car that a lot of different cars have seen here today. It is Wolf Matuszka's car in 20th
Notorious
place.
P-I-N-K?
It is the notorious pink car. And, well, Wolf Matuszka, he's not used to being the one being blue flagged. He's used to people, well, being blue flagged for him.
I don't know what it is.
But he is going to have to move out of the way at some point here for the likes of Caracas. But, I mean, look, you know, no other way to put it. I know we've already said it a couple of times already in this race, but 20th place right now for Wolf Matuszka so far. He's done his mandatory pit stop. He is just racing with people for track position now if they come across him. So he's got, you know, nothing to lose by just trying his all. He's been hit in the back a couple of times here today. But my word, 34th to 20th, right here, right now. This is the driver of the day, right here, right now. I don't think anyone else's performance comes close.
No, it's been absolutely stellar, at a track where we expected it to be an absolute travesty. It's been anything but. It's been a very fantastic day, despite a couple of off-track experiences, one of his own making and one certainly not. But even still, that is a massive pickup, and the way that Wolf has held his ground is impressive as well. Ryan, I've got an interesting question I've been thinking about the last 10 or 15 minutes. I've been trying to do the math, as you might expect, and I'm trying to figure out what the leaders are doing. This is the new trend in ACC, and by new, I mean new-ish, from the end of last year and the beginning of this year, pitting as late as you possibly can if you're inside the top 10. The overcut favored. Why do you think that is in ACC these days?
I think a lot of people favor the overcut because of the uncertainty of where you'll come out on track. If you can't guarantee that you'll come out in free air, if you can't guarantee that you can get past the people that you will come across quickly, it makes a lot more sense, and the kind of half and half strategy doesn't really exist anymore. Like pitting halfway through the race, it isn't really a great idea. It makes sense to pit early, get out of the way, get that free air immediately, which you can almost guarantee unless half the field pits. Or you go all the way to the end, you take whatever, slowdown or traffic you encounter during the race, but you make sure that you won't be encountering any, massive traffic in the middle of the race where maybe that's where the fuel load comes down, you've got the best of your tyres remaining and you want to make the most of it hot lap wise to get those fast laps in. I think the best strategy is to either pit at the start or pit right at the end. And like I said, you have that uncertainty of pitting through the middle part of the race. You don't know if you'll be able to make up that time that you've lost. So a lot of them just like to go as late as they possibly can. Doesn't quite leave them much room towards the end of the race to fix it if anything goes wrong, but in a sense it gives them more control, I guess, over their own destiny, if you like.
Pavel Dozal had a brown trouser moment trying to get under and nearly lost the car. Saved it somehow. I thought for sure that car was going around. Did not. Excellent driving. But we saw it last week. Going back to the overcut conversation that we're having, I see it week in and week out, but especially on display for round number 1 of this championship, it just didn't work. Several cars, fast cars, tried the undercut. It just didn't work. Everyone that did the overcut, like Adam DeBeal and even we see a pass here. Morera is going to get around Jake Boswell. Finally, it's been several laps. Jake was holding their own and might actually get a chance to re-overtake. To the wall goes Morera. That's going to make Boswell go wide. And Old Hall is going to be a crossover again. Just looks like the straightaway speed better in Boswell's car. There he is, closing all the time as we go down into the Cascades. They're still nose to tail. And will we see a potential repass down in Shell Corner now?
Jake Boswell still has to do his mandatory pit stop, of course, but he's not worried about that right now. And Fidel Morera's also got a 5-second penalty, so he wants to get a move on as quick as he can. Jake Boswell just enjoying himself. Didn't score points in the first round at Spa. Well within the points at this stage, and I think even after he comes in to serve his mandatory pit stop, he'll be within a decent points-paying position. We've also had another 5-second penalty come out for Moreira, by the way. He's up to 10 seconds total now as you're watching Benjamin Harmon and Caracas, and that's Harmon back in front of Caracas now. The repass been...
Oh, yeah. Okay, I was going to say, it's like Harmon was a decent size gap behind, but how many times out of Lodge have we seen that today?
Plenty of times, and it definitely looks like the grip just isn't there sometimes. Oh! Benjamin Harmon just wide enough to get around Caracas into turn 1, and that puts him back up into second place. It should be third place once the pit stops cycle out, but of course both of these guys still have to come in and do their pit stops, Jesse Lee, and that could shake things up between the two of them.
Well, it sure will. And just to finish off the overcut undercut conversation, we saw it. I see it every week in races that we cast, and especially on display last week here in this very championship. There was no answer to it. The undercut, the latest possible time was the right time. And you'll see that week in and week out. That used to never happen. The overcut was something that a desperate few would actually try. You would try to either come in as early as possible for the undercut, which was the favored method, or come in at the halfway point. But for whatever reason, that has fallen out of style, and it just does not seem to work anymore. And that's why you've seen so many of your top 15 wait until the last 10 minutes to pit. In fact, we still have the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars still to pit. Gratis Caracas in the 119. They will pit out of their position now, and that will mean one less that needs to make their mandatory pit stop. 8.5 minutes to play. 21 degrees. See, a perfect day here in Britain for a motor race, I think.
Quite warm, in fact, isn't it? 17 degrees out here, ambient. champion. It's what we would call a lovely early summer's day. Very different to the conditions that we've actually had out here in the UK. I mean, it was the day I left for Imola, Jesse Lee. It was snowing, should we say, coming into April.
I heard,
it was
snowing, yeah.
And if that doesn't tell you enough that you need to know about British weather, it's snowing in April. But back to the action on track. No snow out here at Oulton Park, just sunny skies, and that's what we like to see. Some clouds in the air as well. It's definitely brightened up a bit since we had qualifying earlier on in the session. This is Kingston Lee down in 19th place at the moment. He's got Benjamin Harlan just behind him, who is in second place. We want him to make his way through. But of course, Kingston Lee is chasing down Stay Hughes at the moment, so he doesn't exactly want to dive out of the way for the second place man. This might be a good opportunity for Benjamin Harlan to go into the pit lane, get that mandatory pit stop done. Doesn't want to duke it out with these guys, and that's exactly what he's going to do, and that's exactly what the leader's going to do as well. Angel Inostroza into the pit lane, same as Benjamin Harlan, and now, Jesse Lee, we get to find out the answer to the question that we've been asking for a while now. Will Polyakov come out ahead of Inostroza? Which one will get to the front of the field after the pit stops are done? And by the looks of it, to me, it looks like it's going to be Inostroza.
Inostroza is going to come through. Caracas now also coming through, and that is going to be a repass on Benjamin Heilman as well. Caracas gets the job done. The undercut works on that occasion. Even though that was only an undercut by a lap or two, it still counts. Heilman down to P3. Inostroza leading all of them now. The leader of the cars that have pitted. DeVille, leader of the race overall, has a 15-second penalty and has to do a mandatory stop. Jarzabowski has no such penalty, but still has to pit out of P2. Wave yellow flags down into Britain's. Don't see a stranded car. Looks like it's been cleared. Flags have been lifted. Not a lot of action in the two chicanes. I expected a little bit more than we've seen today in Britain's and Hillslip, but we have not had major collisions in the chicanes.
And Benjamin Harlan's in luck, Jesse Lee, because Polyakov must have been held up quite a bit with some traffic later on in the race. He has dropped down. He might have the fastest lap of the race, but he's now in 7th overall. It will be I believe up into 4th once the mandatory pit stops have cycled out. But Benjamin Heilman and Grantis Caracas have actually jumped Polyakov through the pit stop. So by going longer and not pitting in the middle of the race, like what we alluded to earlier when you asked me the question, Polyakov has lost out by, making that decision to go in the middle of the race. It has not worked for them, and they've lost out a second place and a chance to compete for the win as well.
The undercut just doesn't work, does it? That's why I asked you the question. That's why I bring this up, is because I'm trying to figure out what happened. Because it used to work. We could definitely, if you go back to this time last year and all through the summer, the undercut absolutely worked a lot of the time. But somewhere near fall, winter last year, everyone sort of gravitated to the overcut, and for good reason. And I think you've just seen another case in point there of the undercut not working. And all I can attribute it to is magic, because I can't make sense of it myself. The Keys are in the 8, trying to get around Jake Boswell. Took Alexander a decent chunk of time to do the same feat. Of course, Boswell now has pitted up into P14. I thought Boswell would have fallen back a little bit further than they did on their stop. So that's a really well job done. Must have had a really nice race, the 47 ST, because they're still inside the top 15 here.
That's 14 places gained for Jake Boswell. Started 28th and up into 14th, so it's essentially cut their starting position in half, kind of similar to the amount of places gained from Wolf Matuszka. So very good job by the 47 and the 25 here today to gain a load of places over the course of the race. And you asked about why the why the overcut, should we say, has become the more popular option, and what you can attribute it to. I just think that the ACC field is so much more closer now than it ever has been before. And I think that because you don't have splits anymore that have, seconds of pace between each other. I mean, remember, we used to go back to, just looking here at Benjamin Harlan trying to get around Caracas. We used to go back to the days, I think it was about a year and a half ago, where I could compete for low pro, high silver. I can't compete for that anymore, Jesse Lee. Definitely not. You know, I don't drive as much as other people do. But that's the difference, is that the field has become so much more competitive now. There's so many more drivers that, you know, are racing on the regular. They're improving their skills. They're getting quicker. And, you know, the splits aren't the same. There's drivers that used to be silver that are now considered AM. There's drivers that were pro that are now silver. But likewise, there are people that have improved that used to be AM, that are silver, used to be silver, and now pro. So the landscape, in my opinion, has just changed so much. And of course, that's affected things, you know, drastically. And when the splits are so much closer together, the way that they are, it makes it more difficult to just pit and find that clear air, because people just aren't as slow as they used to be.
I feel you're spot on with that assessment, Ryan Gill. And right before we get to the end of the race, by the way, I'm just going to mention a couple of the final penalties that have come out since the last time we talked about them, and the pit cycle has finished itself as we continue to watch Heilman try to get around Caracas. That for Pete Sanu, oh my goodness! That car was completely sideways! How did he save that?
Benjamin Heilman, that could have been almost race ending for him and could have definitely put him out of the podium places.
Oh, baby!
The replay makes it look even more impressive as well. Polyakov will have seen that. He'll have seen the time gain that he's got on Benjamin Heilman. He'll know that that 796 is not entirely comfortable at the moment, and he'll be trying to close that gap now as fast as he can. In the last couple of minutes, the pit window is closed. It doesn't matter, as everyone has fielded out and finished their pit stops, but the positions are far from decided. Heilman may have lost the chance to compete for second, but if he's not careful, he might still lose out third.
He might do. Very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, no further action between the 296 and the 40. 5-second penalty for car 1 for dive bombing the 555. No further action. Possible net code issue between the 25 and the 999. 5-second penalty for car 999 for dive bombing the 25. No further action. 214 and 796. 5-second penalty, 314 for overtake with contact. Drive-through for car 340 for taking out the 171 in a racing incident between the 796 and the 119.
So the steward's definitely been busy today, and we'll hope that that's the last of the action that they have to review today as we get towards the end of the race. The leader is on the final lap. Inostroza has started it, and it has been pretty much a perfect race, hasn't it, for the 296. They took pole position. They managed to keep the lead at the start of the race away from Benjamin Heilman, and then they just tried to clear off into the distance, and they pretty much did just that. Only a 3-second gap between themselves and Caracas so far, but they have driven a fantastic race. They won't have fastest lap of the race, but that will not bother them one bit. It has been a brilliant effort from Inostroza here today, and just behind them, in fact, you could also see the Ferrari of Wolf Matuszka, and if that isn't a great sight, I don't know what is. We're looking at Polyakov at the moment, who is closing in on Benjamin Heilman. This third place overall is still up for grabs, and the 40, which lost out massively with the pit stops, is now hungry to get back into that top 3.
Heilman will very much want to keep this position. This is championship points that he can ill afford to lose. It's going to be close no matter what. Inostroza finished 11th place in race number 1. Of course, there were STs in between them, but I digress, as that was not the best finish for Inostroza, but today rectifying all the wrongs. It's going to be very close between about 4 of the drivers at the top. You can take that all the way to the bank, I can promise you that, but nobody has been more entertaining today and more dominant than Angel Inostroza. Set it on the pole at the end of qualifying and has won the race. But look what happened behind. What happened to Gratis Caracas? It's a huge crash. Benjamin Heilman's in it. Wolf Matuszka's in it.
Massive contact between Caracas and Heilman. Doesn't look like the positions did change before the line. Let's have a look exactly at what happened between them. You can see here it's Wolf Matuszka and Grantis Caracas. I'm wondering here, did Was there a bit of contact, or did they just lose it coming out? They're coming up towards the line. Wolf just got on the grass and came over the side of the track,
Oh,
and that
no.
hit the side of Caracas. It doesn't look like there was any impact on the results. Caracas still crossed the line ahead of Heilmann by 1.2 seconds. Heilmann still managed to retain that top three. Wolf Matuszka finished 21st as he was before the incident, so there's been no major changes for position due to the incident, but my word, had that happened a lap earlier, it could have been catastrophic for the race results.
It could have been. It was high drama at the start-finish line as they all cycle through. And I thought for a second that there was contact between the top couple of cars, but turns out it was Wolf Matuszka got onto the grass. And luckily, the line is where it is, because if it's another couple of meters down the road, that would have dramatically changed the finishing order of this race. Jarzabowski does win the ST class over Alapichik. Nadera finishes 7th, and he got Ostrauch in the 3rd place in that class. Man, what a race that was. It was spirited as ever. Exactly what you want from the Challenge Cup and the Oulton Park racetrack. Of course, it's going to be very close up at the front between Benjamin Heilmann, Polyakov, and Caracas now. And now you have Inestrosa that's thrown their name into the ring. They're not going to go quietly this season as well. It's going to be fantastic down the stretch. Results of the race confirmed. Polyakov will get additional points for having the speed juice fastest lap as well. What a race. Ryan Gill, what can you say about that?
Well, one thing I can say about that is Polyakov will get the award for fastest lap of the race. They don't even have a fastest sector across any of the sectors in that fastest lap of the race, and if that doesn't sum up how crazy this race has been, I don't know what will. We've had an absolutely unbelievable event. Remember, Wolf Matuszka started right at the back of the field. They started in 34th place. They finished 21st in the end. An incredible effort from the Ferrari driver. I think it was Bart Matt just started down in 29th. I think they finished in 11th, Jesse Lee. Absolutely unbelievable. Jake Boswell also gaining 14 places as well. Unbelievable, incredible racing. We saw plenty of incidents, but we saw some absolutely incredible saves, and we saw some incredible overtakes and battles as well. And I can't wait to do it all over again in a week's time. And we'll actually be heading out to a track that is not that dissimilar in terms of difficulty for overtaking. We're heading to the Hungaroring for round 3, and that will be a challenge for the drivers as well. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to it, and we will be looking forward to it as well.
We sure will. I was wondering, too, the M2 Cup, which starts this week, there's still a little bit of time to get a sign-up and pre-queue for that. The first ever touring car championship on RCI with the new M2 BMW. And I was wondering why the tracks were the way they were for that championship. And looking at the rest of this schedule, including today, I figured out why. Because they just didn't want to double up the tracks for the two champs. Wanted to make them both unique. But this champ is going to go down to the wire. I can already feel it. There's so much variability in the tracks, the cars, and the driving itself. It's going to be that kind of champ. I said it last week. I'll say it again, Ryan. Whether I'm on the mic or not, I'm going to be front row and center watching throughout this series.
Jesse Lee going to be getting himself some VIP tickets and watching from the VIP balcony, I feel, for the rest of the season. And, well, you can catch all the action for the Challenge Cup here on a Monday night on RCI TV. As Jesse Lee alluded to, there will be some further races throughout the rest of the week. We have, of course, the Diamond Drive Cup with round 4 coming for that championship at this point. Jesse Lee will be back on the microphone for that one alongside Nate Norbury. And I believe for the Diamond Drive Cup, Jesse Lee, you guys are heading out to Donington Park this weekend. So sticking it in the UK for the time being. But as you said, the M2 Championship will be starting on Thursday. That's out at Suzuka on the 14th of April. Should have a live stream out for that as well. The final round of the Friday Sprint Challenge is also this week. They're at Silverstone, so another race in Britain, but at a different circuit. And then, of course, the Night Owl Championship does return from its hiatus because of the World Tour race that we had on the past weekend. And, well, They're not at a British track, but they are at a track that we'll be at next week, and that is Hungaroring. So that's on a Saturday night if you would like to catch that one. Of course, we will be back on the Monday night. And a big, big thank you to our partners here, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. Race Department, of course, if you want all the latest up-to-date news and mods regarding sim racing, you can check them out. Our service and races are hosted on AK Informatica. So, of course, do check them out for some great servers to host your races on. Driver 61, if you want to win like some of the pros that you've seen out here today, like Angel Inostroza, get yourself some coaching. Costs $10 to access the Sim Racing Academy. You can get 25% off with our discount code in the description below. Fanatec, you know plenty about them already. They offer high-end products for sim racing at a affordable price and at a high-end price as well if you're willing to pay. And of course, the CSL DD, the new entry level DD that they have available as well. You can use our affiliate code to support RCI at no extra cost. And Sim Racing GP, if you're interested in starting up a league of your own someday, or maybe just a community for your friends to hang out in every now and then, you can check out Sim Racing GP and get started today. From myself, from Ryan Mawson behind the cameras, who's done a fantastic job covering all the action here today, Jesse Lee in
Indeed.
the commentary box, and all the stewards who, let's be honest, are the heroes of today with the job that they've done for this race. A big, big thank you from everyone at RCI for supporting us. We just passed 4,000 subscribers here on RCI TV on the weekend. We cannot thank you enough, and we look forward to all the future streams that we will have here. We will see you in a week's time at the Hungaroring for the continuation of the Challenge Cup.